This is part 3 of the myth of Black Egypt. Afrocentrism is a mental disorder. And that's exactly what it is. It's a form of the self-esteem project that started back in the 70s. You know, there's mostly white liberals wanted to create this illusion of self-esteem in the black community in order to reverse the dropout rates, the lower grades, the black pregnancy rates, and all that good stuff. Of course, it hasn't really worked. If anything, it probably created a form of misguided arrogance where it's being translated into more assault against whites, rape of white women, and and increase crime in general, including house invasions of blacks who it's like a kind of politically correct form of crime where the criminals would go from their neighborhoods into white neighborhoods in order to rob the enemy, in essence. But the Egypt thing plays a big role in this because it's part of this illusions that's been created, again, by white liberals. Because all of this so-called writers and individuals who created these illusions of a black Egypt, which of course never existed, were white liberals. Now, let us suppose for a second that Egypt was black. Then what happened? All right. Then what happened? Then there was like this decline where blacks. What is the reason why black Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, is in such dire strait? Well, sub-Saharan Africa is the only area of the world today that's gone into decline. It's actually going backward. You got places like India, even Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia, the Philippines, China, Latin America, Central America, up moving in a forward direction. Sub-Saharan Africa, the so-called children of the descendants of the pharaohs, are either slaughtering each other, dying of AIDS and all kinds of diseases, tropical diseases, something that, of course, white Europeans have done away with more than a century ago as a result of white ingenuity and science. And yet you have blacks in Africa dying of things like malaria, something that was licked in Europe more than 100 years ago. Awful diseases like Ebola virus. There is even some reports of the Black Plague, not to mention, of course, leprosy. This is all black Africa. The descendants of the pharaohs, the Egyptian, the wonderful Nubians, who ruled the world and according to this fantasy kind of ideology, because that's what it is. It's almost like a parody of an ideology. At least an ideology has some basis of truth. This has like zero basis of truth. But it's kind of laughable in many ways that this people actually believe in this nonsense. Now, so how is it that you have the situation where a handful of whites, for instance, took over South Africa and Rhodesia, and they became the boss, and they ran the place like like their own, and they made the only parts of sub-Saharan Africa one of the wealthiest in the world. Certainly, South Africa was, and Rhodesia as well. Because take, for instance, Rhodesia, which is a smaller country. Now, Rhodesia was a country that was exporting foods, right? This was a country that when the whites ran, a handful of white people, really. When the white people ran it, this was a country that was exporting food. Everybody was employed. It was a farming community, just the incredible, wonderful soil of that part of the world, which is very much a temperate kind of European style. And what happened? Well, then the blacks took over. Then Robert Mugabe and his gangsters, the gangsters took over. And so what happened now? Well, Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, is nothing more than a incredibly impoverished country. In fact, it's so impoverished that the Zimbabwean dollar is worth absolutely nothing. It's worth less than the paper it's printed on. In fact, they don't even use money anymore. They use the barter system. One guy says, I'll give you my crappy pair of shoes if you give me, a piece of bread. I mean, that's the country today. And you got white liberals in Europe now saying that we ought to help them out. Really? I mean, this is the same government that chased out and gone on this murderous rampage against whites. And now we want to help them out with my tax dollars? I don't think so. I mean, these people are supposed to be the descendants of the Egyptians, of the pharaohs, And so why can they build pyramids there? Where are the pyramids in sub-Saharan Africa? Where are this great philosophy and religion that supposedly have come out of black Nubian Egypt? Where are they? Nowhere to be seen. And so now they expect, white, white taxpayers to bail them out. Of course, right? So this is the laughable, element. This is almost like, beyond laughter, because then it turns tragic in the sense that they, of course, they're going to blame the white man for what's going on in Rhodesia. And of course now more and more South Africa, which is of course larger than Rhodesia, is going the way of Rhodesia. South Africa is being taken over now by the it's crazy, I mean, it's really nuts. The president, whatever his name is, believes that AIDS is just the result of bad food or something. I mean, these are the descendants of the pharaohs who believe that AIDS is a creation, is manufactured, I guess, by the white man. This is the kind of this kind of mentality. And then of course you have the rapes. Those people who are diseased with AIDS rape girls because they think that having sex with virgins will cure them. The descendants of the pharaohs, who believe that having sexual intercourse with young girls, sometimes as young as 5, 6, 7 years old, will cure them of AIDS. These are the descendants of those who built the Great Pyramids. If you can believe that, if you can believe this incredible, almost psychopathic, because that's what it is, and you just have to listen to the comments, of these people that write these comments with such hatred, with such venom. It's like never looking at reality. It's almost like reality is their fiction. To them, fantasy, is reality, and reality is a fiction. They look at what's going on and they look at the death and the AIDS spreading, and the voodoo nonsense, and they think that's great. I mean, they look at reality, at the starvation, and no, that's the result of something else. That's the result of a conspiracy by the Europeans. Now, of course, now they're dragging the Chinese into it. Now the Chinese have become like the enemy. Now, of course, the Chinese are the only people who are willing to invest any money in sub-Saharan Africa, and they're called racist now, because they exploited them. I mean, they don't seem to realize that it's by investment that you create wealth, but they don't get it. It's almost like. But going back to Rhodesia, the reason why Mugabe and his gangsters took over the country is because they have this concept. It's almost like adolescent, almost like infantile views. This is the kind of mentality you're dealing with. Almost like they're like children. They think that the reason why the white man is rich is because there's a pot of gold that they own. See, the white man has the pot of gold. So what the black man really needs to do is take over the government and then have access to the pot of gold. See, that's what the white Rhodesians were doing. See, they had the pot of, that's why they were rich. They had the pot of gold. So now the blacks have taken over. So now they got the pot of gold. Of course, they soon realize there is no pot of gold. You have to work for it. See, the only pot of gold is work. So they started saying things like, well, it's because the whites had the more fertile land. That's why they were able to grow better. No, and of course then the blacks took over the agricultural land of the whites, and so because they don't know what they're doing, or because they don't have any patience, in letting the ground, lie fallow for a couple of years before you can plant again, or of course have the fertilizers ready, or do whatever you need to do not to burn the agricultural earth. All right, you're supposed to take care of the earth. That's the reason why, Europeans, through their ingenuity, they can still grow food. In fact, export food from the same ground that they've been using for agriculture for the past 3,000 years. So now you have this in Rhodesia. In less than 20 years, they have completely burned the topsoil. I mean, it's like. In 20 years, they completely destroyed the agricultural foundation of the country. These are the descendants of the pharaohs. All right, these are the great geniuses. These are the people that supposedly built the pyramids. Can you imagine that? And so now they're starving to death. And so now they are in dire straits. So now you begin to see the flies over the kids' head and the big bellies and the dysentery, people dying of diarrhea, dysentery, diseases, and so on and so forth. So so going back to this ridiculous view that that the Egyptians were black. If the Egyptians were black, I guarantee you, no pyramid would ever have been built. No Sphinx of Giza would have ever been built. There would have been no government. It would have looked exactly like Zimbabwe.